Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Conscious Living Spiritist Group. Good morning to anyone who might be watching us live on the internet right now. It's a beautiful day, it's a beautiful holiday, and we hope to be able to share with you a beautiful message that does not belong to us, but it's the message of the gospel and interpreted by the Spirit Emmanuel. It's not so much of a lecture as it is a little bit of what we do here every Wednesday when we come together to study the gospel according to Spiritism. And the Spirit Emmanuel, he has a series of books that we have here, a few of them who have been translated to English, where he will take passages of the gospel and he will interpret them. So this is one way in which we can actually deepen our knowledge of the gospel. You can actually open these books, read them, and for each page you can go to the specific passage that Emmanuel is citing. You can read that, and then you can read the message and start to have a deeper understanding of the knowledge. There is also some work done by the Spiritist Federation in Brazil where they make the work easier for us because they choose certain passages of the gospel, and then what they do is they give you the full interpretation and the citation of in which one of these books you find the passages of Emmanuel that relate to that specific topic. And so these are called a deep study of Spiritism, and there are a couple volumes that look specifically at the teachings and the parables of Jesus. So we use that for our study today. It's really good because help is saving some time in finding things, right? So we are going to start from the beginning, and the very beginning is what is called the invitation. So we are going to do, just as I said, we are going to read the passage from the gospel, and this is in Matthew and in Luke. So it reads, "As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. 'Come, follow me,' Jesus said, 'and I will send you out to fish for people.' At once they left their nets and followed him. Going from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father, and they followed him." And in Luke we find, "After this, Jesus went out and saw a tax collector by the name Levi sitting at his tax booth. 'Follow me,' Jesus said to him, and Levi got up, left everything, and followed him." All right, so what is relevant about the invitation? What can we learn from this particular passage? So it's interesting to notice that after each one of the disciples were invited, what did they do? They dropped everything and they followed him. So in the first paragraph, they left their nets. On the second paragraph, they left the boat and their father. On the third one, Levi got up and he left everything. So we have all been invited. We have all received already the invitation. And because sometimes we hesitate a little bit in saying yes, we keep being re-invited daily. So people, circumstances, challenges are constant invitations for us to accept the challenge of living a different life, of integrating these paradigms into our ways of living. But what is required is that we leave everything. Now, not literally, because every time we look at the gospel, it's not for us to take in things literally. These spirits, they were missionaries. They had this specific mission to which they were prepared prior to their incarnation. When they heard the invitation, they had no doubt, because it was already stamped in their unconscious, that that was what they were supposed to do. But in some ways, it's stamped in all of us that that's what we are supposed to do. And the relative interpretation of this is not that we are going to drop our jobs, our homes, our families to follow Christ. It means that each day we are invited to choose between material and spiritual. Not in the sense that material is the bad and spiritual is the good, because material provides a spiritual experience. But we are invited to choose. Are we going to choose the means or the end? Material is the means, but spiritual is the end. So, and we are in this path of inner transformation, we are invited to sharpen our view of the meaning of life and what is essential and what our goals truly are. So, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, we were studying this year 2 weeks ago, chapter 23 called Strange Morals. This chapter is called Strange Morals because it refers to kind of weird things that Jesus had said. And the beginning of the chapter, the spirits, they will tell us that, many of the things that were said got lost into translation. So a lot of times, some of the things that are presented to us said by Jesus don't make sense because they're not in line with the gist of his message. But in this particular chapter, there is a passage that says, whoever left his home or his brothers or his sisters or his father or his mother or his wife or his children or his land for my name shall receive 100-fold and shall have eternal life. So isn't this exactly what the disciples did? They left everything, including the Father, their homes, their families. And again, what does that mean to us? A lot of times in life, when we have made a decision, we have heard the invitation and decide to accept the invitation, we're going to have to make choices. Sometimes choices, let's take something very simple, friendships. Sometimes we have progressed in certain ways, we have developed a certain level of awareness that is no longer compatible with some of the values that some friends of ours still hold, or even sometimes values that our family, a lot of times a whole group in a family stays in one place and that one person becomes more aware. And so a lot of times we are put in situations where we have to choose. Some people, some parents will really say, or sometimes the children to the parents, you either stay with me or you can leave the house. So we are actually forced to make some very difficult choices. What should guide us and what should give us peace in the choices that we make is analyzing what values are guiding us in that point of life. So no one is being asked to do this literally, but I'm telling you that as you evolve in consciousness and awareness, there will be moments where we have to choose our integrity and have to choose to be true to the principles that we embrace. And these will bring dissatisfaction in others. I was listening to Lady Gaga on Facebook this week. There's like this clip that's going on where she speaks about the challenges of her life. There has been many, apparently. And she talks about the many ways that she's trying to get her life together. But she says that one of the things that brought the greatest amount of sanity for her was the day that she found out that she should learn to say no. So that by saying no, she could stay true to her values and to her true self. And so sometimes that's what it takes. You have to leave certain things and certain people and certain ways in which you have believing to be true to your spiritual path and to what you believe and what you are. All right. So, but what are we invited to do? So Jesus invited the disciples to do what? And in this book called Ideas and Illustrations, the spirit Neo Lucio, he says, virtues are always venerable, but not made to be crystallized, such a rare jewelry without any use. If love covers the multitude of sins, service, inspired in love, can grant a transformed soul the close friendship of the angels. So what we invited to do is to develop our virtues. We all have been created simple, with all the potentialities, all the divine seeds in us, and we invited to develop them, to unfold them, to nourish them, and feel them blooming within our souls. But how good is to have this beautiful garden that you have actually planted in the soil of your own heart, if you pass by people and you don't distribute the flowers to touch other lives and to bring fragrance to other lives. So we are invited not only to develop the seeds of love, generosity, compassion, but also to share through service. And Emmanuel, in the book Living Spring, chapter 58, has a page called Disciples. And in there he says, the life of each conscious person entails a set of duties towards him or herself, the family of souls that gather around his or her sentiments, and towards all humankind. So if we are seeking to live and to be conscious persons, if we are part of the conscious living mindset, we cannot narrow the scope of our lives to ourselves, to our own well-being, to the well-being of our blood family, because that is way too narrow. Each one of us, whether we are a well-known celebrity in this world for one reason or another or not, we have a duty. And our duty is to make the world where we live in a better place to the extent that we can. So this is what the invitation is. Jesus didn't do the work by himself. He actually invited 12 to show us that everything needs to be done together within the spirit of cooperation. And that in the same way that he used 12, that time he is using all of us to continue on to spread the message and to contribute to the transformation of the world that we live in. All right, so that was the invitation. And then he will start his work and perform his first miracle, so to speak. We know today that none of those things were true miracles in the sense that there is an explanation for everything, at the wedding feast at Cana. And so the passage in the gospel reads, on the third day a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, they have no more wine. Woman, why do you involve me? Jesus replied, my hour has not come yet. His mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. It's not our intent to explore every single aspect of every single one of these passages, because each one of them probably would be a lecture in itself. But let's look at some of the aspects that we find here. On the third day of a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. Jesus starts his mission in a wedding, in a party. It's a time of joy. The arrival of the gospel is a reason for joy and for celebration. And he surrounds himself with his very close friends and his mom. So the work that we do of spreading the message of the gospel should be done under a sentiment of friendship, of joy. It is a celebration. It is a party in the sense that the gospel is the good news that come to our lives. And then it's this very sentence here. He says, his mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. And if we go to the book, The Way, the Truth, and the Life, on chapter 171, there is actually a message called A Mother's Word. And so let's see what Emmanuel has to tell us about this particular statement that we find in the Gospel. We too are taking part in the wedding feast of the Gospel. Although almost 20 centuries have gone by, the jubilation is still that of a wedding feast because the perfect union has not yet happened. In this grand concert of the renewing idea, we are humble servants. On many occasions, the wine of our hopes has gone dry. We feel worn out and disillusioned. We implore the maternal tenderness, and Mary answers, do whatever he tells you. This is so poetic. This is so incredible. The work of Emmanuel is so rich. You know that Emmanuel was Publio Lentulus in the book 2,000 years ago that you can actually find here, where he actually had the opportunity of meeting Jesus. And after that meeting, he denied Jesus. He did not accept the invitation. And that cost him centuries of suffering, where he was guilty of not seeing, of being basically blind. And the day that he actually was able to rehabilitate himself, he made a commitment to continue to disseminate the gospel. So he says that he takes courses about the gospel in the spiritual realm so that he can learn more and more about the deep meanings of the messages. And he brings it to us through these books and many other works of his so that we too can have a better understanding. So it's his way of making up for the time that he has lost. So he brings this beautiful interpretation. So we have been invited. We have been invited to a wedding with a message, a wedding with this new proposal. And then we fall in love with the message, right? That's the honeymoon phase, or that's the first hours of any marriage. Everything is beautiful. The message is wonderful, and we're excited about it. But as he says here, although almost 20 centuries have gone by, the jubilation is still that of a wedding feast because the perfect union has not yet happened. So our union with the message, our capacity, because it takes work. It takes work. Like any marriage, like any union. At first, everybody's beautiful, everything is beautiful, the message is amazing. But then you're going to find out, like in any relationship, it actually takes work. It takes work. And many people, they will switch from one relationship to another because they're looking for the excitement. So there are people that keep jumping from one religion to the other. They can never find a place to stop because they're always seeking for the first moment of excitement. This is it. Now I found Buddhism. This is it. Now I found Spiritism. But then suddenly, Spiritism is going to ask a lot of you. Oh no, this is not for me. Let me go back to Catholic or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Every single religion at some point is going to call you for a deeper inner work, which is the true union. So beautiful, beautiful perspective that Emmanuel brings here to us. And in this process, like in any relationship, at times we'll feel tired. And when we feel tired, we want a mother's lap or embrace. So she who recognizing Jesus, someone higher than her, she goes to him and says, look, the wine is over. We need more wine. And we should do the same. So whenever we are tired and there's no more wine to be served, there's no more hope, we should look up for the ones who are above us and ask for help. And then she tells the servants, do what he is telling you to do. So life is going to answer back to us and it's going to say, do what he's telling you to do. Although difficult at first, although it won't bring you the immediate rewards that we are used to go for, if you stick to it, it will bring you exactly what you're looking for, peace and harmony. And a type of joy that is not the joy of the first moment. It's not the joy of the honeymoon. It is the joy of someone who has chosen to walk the walk together and is going to discover a new level of joy. One that does not go away from one day to the other, but it stays within you, giving a different meaning to your life. All right, so let's go to another passage. Jesus calms the storm. We have been invited, we have attended the wedding, but guess what? Life is not always, right, this calm sea. And so we find this passage called Jesus Calms the Storm. And it is in the Gospel of Mark, where we read, and I'm going to ask somebody else to read. Sherry, would you mind reading for me out loud, please?
Jesus calms the storm. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the group behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him?"
All right, so let's look at this particular passage and what we can learn from it. So in the very beginning, it says, that day when evening came, he said to his disciple, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along. So one way in which we can understand this, every time you're going from one side to the other side, it means that you are undertaking a journey from one place to another place, from one state to another state. So here starts the journey. But when the journey starts, they leave the crowd behind. Who is the crowd? Is the crowd of darkness, is the crowd of obstacles, is the crowd of deficiencies that we still experience within ourselves. But in order to do that, they didn't do that alone, because we all need some help. So they took him along. They took him along in the journey. There were also other small boats with him, so no one is traveling alone. There are other small boats. So our boat, our life, our decisions are going to affect the boats that are traveling nearby. The boats are small because every single person, no matter who you are and no matter how small you perceive yourself, has a shot in life and is invited. The invitation is extensive to every single person. There is no chosen one. All of us have been invited, from the ones who we consider to be saints to the ones that we label as evil. We are all children of God. We all have been invited, and we will all get there one day or another. For some of us, we'll take a shorter way because we make better choices for ourselves. For some people, it will take a little longer, depending on the choice that they are making. But the salvation is there for everyone. The opportunity is there for everyone. Otherwise, God would not be a safe, a fair, and loving God. So there are the little boats traveling along with us. And then a furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping in a cushion. So naturally, once we decide to change, to go from one side to the other, guess what? The storms will hit. About a week or two ago, I got a phone call from someone who I don't even think is in this state. I don't know, heard about me and called me to ask for prayers. And this person said to me, you know, I just joined Spiritism about 2 months ago. And since I joined it, my life is like much worse, you know. And I said to her, this is great news, you know, probably not what she wanted to hear. But once you decided to change your pathway, some forces will start like playing against you. People who are not interested. And you say, well, but the spirits are this bad. Sometimes our friends will give us a hard time. What's up with you? Are you becoming a fanatic? I don't recognize you anymore, you know? So the spirits too, they're like, what's happening to you? You're not like one of us anymore. And so like a lot of times things are gonna happen, and a lot of times we will face these beautiful waves in our lives. Whether it is from people, whether it is from the circumstances, they're gonna come. Oh, you really decided to change? Let me test how strong is your will and your decision. Let me test if you really mean what you're saying. And so those storms come to test us in our faith and in our resolution to see if we're truly ready to give our testimony and move on with our decision. But Jesus was in the stern, asleep in a cushion. How come? How do we understand that? Now, let me ask you, if you were deeply concerned about something, do you sleep well?
No.
No. I have a problem. I wake up 3 or 4 times in the middle of the night to go to the restroom, right? So it's a nightmare, because if I'm concerned with something, one of these times I can't go back to sleep. I don't have a sleeping problem. I can sleep very well as long as my mind is in peace, right? So Jesus is sleeping because he fears nothing. He has no concerns. He completely trusts everything, so he can sleep. So it does not mean that he's not paying attention or caring for his disciples. It just means that he's in a place different than theirs. He's in a place of full trust, so he can sleep peacefully. As we can too, when our minds is fully in peace. And so, in the gospel, we read about faith and learn about faith. Chapter 19, item 3 will say that sincere and true faith is always calm. It provides the patience that knows how to wait, because having its point of support in the mind and in the understanding of things, it carries the certainty of arriving at its objective. So he was certain that they would get out of the storm, that they would get safely where they need to get. So he was calm, because that's what faith does. It gives you calm. Keep calm, right? You have faith. So that's it. So all our anxiety, all our sleepless nights, if we had the faith of the size of a seed of mustard, we would sleep better. That's what the gospel teaches us. All right, so far we have talked about the invitation, we have talked about the wedding, and we have talked about the storms. It is common that the boat of our existence at different times will be hit by trials, winds, and waves. In such moments, it is important to be prepared, embracing and manifesting faith within the certainty that the Lord's protection is there, and we need to be prepared to answer the question, do you still have no faith? Which is what he asked the disciples. Do you still have no faith? Right? My answer to him would be, yes, Lord, I'm working on it. Right? All right. So let's look at another passage, the wonderful fishing day. And he got into one of the boats, which was Simon's, and asked him to put out a little way from the land. And he sat down and began teaching the people from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch." Simon answered and said, "Master, we work hard all night and caught nothing, but I will do as you say and let down the nets." When they had done this, they enclosed a great quantity of fish, and the nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boats for them to come and help them. And they came and filled both of the boats so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw that, he fell down at Jesus' feet, saying, "Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." For amazement had seized him and all his companions because of the catch of fish which they had taken. All right, so let's look at this passage. So when he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch." And Simon answered and said, "Master, we worked hard all night and caught nothing." So here, Peter is one of the facets of Peter at that time. He was a little didn't really believe that they would get anything, because the other thing about Peter is he was a very hard worker. He had no fear of working, so he had to stay out in the deep seas all night working. But he didn't believe Jesus in the first moment. But another thing about Peter is he was very obedient. He was very obedient. So he did what the master said, and he cast the net. So we're going to find in the book, The Way, the Truth, and the Life, chapter 21, a passage that called The Moral Way. And in it, Emmanuel says, "The human spirit is a never-evolving fisherman in the regenerative school of earth. Each one's situation is the boat. On each new day, people get out of bed with their nets of interest. Are we casting our net on the right side? Are our thoughts and actions based on true justice?" So another interesting interpretation of Emmanuel. So what Jesus had that the disciples didn't have was the ability to see. So there's nothing miraculous about this passage, with the exception that his vision was a wide vision, a deeper vision, so he could see where the fishes were. So he told them, "Cast the net on this side because this is where the fishes are, and you'll catch the fishes." Okay? So the question for us is, every day when we get out on our boat, are we casting our net on the right side of things? Where is our energy going? What are the interests that are driving our life? This is something that we need to think, because sometimes we need to cast in places where initially it feels like it's a wrong cast because we didn't catch anything. We didn't catch that, again, I'm going to go back to the same idea, that immediate reward that the world can offer us. But we have to trust that Jesus knows. He has the vision. He sees where the fish is. And if he tells us that it's important to love our enemies, we're going to cast the net in that direction. We are going to put our efforts into loving everyone, even if we cannot understand exactly how that works initially for our own happiness. But we have to trust the one who can see and who guides us in our own fishing, in the casting of our own nets. And our job, as we leave here today, as we finish listening to the lecture, is asking, again, am I casting my nets on the right places, on the right side of life or not? When we do the fraternal counseling on the center, sometimes people come to us and their life is truly, truly a deep mess. But as we listen to the stories, what we realize many times, it has gotten to that place because they have cast their nets in the wrong places. They have made very poor choices for themselves that led to the states of confusion and disarray that they are experiencing. Not saying that life is easy per se, but a lot of times, for one reason or another, not necessarily because we are bad people, but a lot of times we are blind in our awareness, in the understanding. And so we make choices that bring a lot of disharmony to our lives and that could be avoided, truly could be avoided, with a little bit of thoughtfulness, a little bit of introspection, a little bit of self-knowledge and understanding what's leading you to make certain choices. So there is a passage by Emmanuel in the book Our Daily Bread, chapter 21, called Deep Water. And in this passage, it reads, "This verse leads us to think about our companions in struggle who feel forsaken in the human experience. When your time of difficulty arrives, assure yourself that the days for fishing in deep water have come to your soul, and that it is time to search for true values without the incentive of certain illusions offered by the material experiences. If you find yourself alone, if you feel yourself forsaken, remember that beyond the grave, there are friends watching over you." I love this because you know what? It comes a time for each one of us that we find ourselves in deep water, alone, because there's certain places in our spiritual journey that no one can go for us, places deep inside ourselves, places of pain, places of trauma, places of disconnection, places of frailty. We must go into the deep water. We must dive into the depths of our own souls. And in that sense, many times we'll feel very, very lonely. Although there are boats around us, nobody can reach that place with us. It's for us to be there. It's our individual experience. But what Emmanuel reminds us is that in these moments where we feel so lonely and perhaps forsaken, to remember that we are never, ever alone. And in speaking of not being alone, and in closing, the very last passage, I apologize because it is a little long, but it's very beautiful, which is called On the Road to Emmaus. And in this passage, it reads, "Now that the same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, 'What are you discussing together as you walk along?' They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, 'Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know about the things that have happened there in these days?' 'What things?' he asked. 'About Jesus of Nazareth,' they replied. 'He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the third day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning but didn't find his body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see Jesus. He said to them, 'How foolish you are, and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?' And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued on as if he were going further. But they urged him strongly, 'Stay with us, for it is nearly evening. The day is almost over.' So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took the bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, 'Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?' They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. They were found the 11, and those with them assembled together and saying, 'It is true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon.' Then the two told what had happened on the way and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread." So it's a long passage, but it's a beautiful passage. And in this passage, couple things. First of them, Jesus' resurrection. He shows up several times in the New Testament after his crucifixion. He materialized himself. And this is well explained in Spiritism for anyone who wants to read and study a little bit more. What's interesting is that Jesus is walking with them in the road to Emmaus, and they did not recognize him. And often he's walking right next to us, and we too don't recognize him. And he's walking very close to us in the figure of a friend, in the figure of a mentor, of a mother, a father, a stranger who comes into our lives in moments unexpected. He is right there. And we don't recognize him because a lot of times we walk in looking down, just as the disciple was. We are taken by doubt. We are taken by fear. And fear and doubt will narrow our ability to perceive the love, the presence of the love, the abundance of the love that's always surrounding us and always available to us. And then just before that, it says, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them. So whether we are perceiving him or not, he's always there with us. And to finish, I'm going to bring a couple more passages from Emmanuel. One of them is when he broke the bread, from our daily bread, chapter 129. Jesus has accompanied them like a nameless friend, setting the truth in their hearts with caring, tender explanations. For most of the way, they were in the company of this wise, loving man who they considered to be a generous and affable stranger. It was only when he broke the bread that they recognized the beloved master. These two disciples had not been able to identify him by his words or his warm gestures. Nevertheless, as soon as the materialized bread appeared, all their doubts vanished and they believed. So like I was saying before, there are many times that Jesus is right next to us, generous, caring, loving, but we are unable to recognize his presence. And this is the last message. This is actually a picture that I have right above my desk. It belonged to my grandmother. It was over her bed for as long as I can remember, her room. And so after she passed away, I was lucky enough to inherit it, and I have it over my desk, which is the two disciples on the road to Emmaus. And here is a final interpretation by Emmanuel, just before this. It's chapter 95, it's called The Unknown Friend. And I'm going to read a little bit and then close with that. On their way to Emmaus, the downcast followers were discussing the terrible events of the Calvary. They were tormented with grief, doubt had pierced their souls, leaving them discouraged and faithless, like we many times are. However, an unknown man joined them on the road. He looked like a poor pilgrim. Without identifying himself, he explained the truths of the scripture and praised the cross and suffering. Both of the disciples had allowed themselves to get entangled in a web of ungrateful contradictions, but they now felt a pleasant well-being as they listened to his consoling argumentation. It was only at the end of the journey, when they felt rejuvenated in the warm environment of the inn, that they realized that the unknown man was the master. There are still disciples on the symbolic road of Emmaus every day. They know the gospel, but are shocked by the sacrifices required for ongoing spiritual illumination. They do not understand the divine ambient of the cross, but search instead for distant mental landscapes. Nonetheless, there is always an unknown person walking beside those who waver and flee. He or she has the appearance of a misunderstood pilgrim, an unexpected companion, a benevolent old man or woman, or even a timid child. His or her voice is different than that of others. His or her explanations are firmer, and his or her appeals are gentler. Those who partake of the banquet of the cross for just one moment will never forget it. They may leave for the world outside and linger on dark pathways. Nevertheless, a time will come when Jesus unexpectedly comes looking for these wayward travelers. He will support them until they are safe and free in the inner faith. So with that, I close our presentation for this morning, hoping that this brief study of the gospel can really stimulate you to read these books. But don't only read them. Do what I just said. Open 95, the one that we just read right now, right? And you're going to find the passage here. Go to the passage. So much poetry, so much consolation, so much understanding of the gospel. Some people say the gospel is so difficult to understand. I read the Bible and I don't understand anything. Well, there's today resources, and Emmanuel is in the Spirit is one of the greatest resources for us to understand the gospel. So we have these books, all of them, or almost all of them for sale. If you don't have, I really encourage you to take one. Start with any one of them and enjoy the road that Emmanuel presents to all of us, so that we can get to that end and feel the warm and the safety place that faith brings into our lives.